friends, welcome to another video. Today's going to be a fun one because we're going to be talking about freeze dryers. This is our brand new freeze dryer that we just got and we've already made some fun stuff in it. So I want to talk a little bit about freeze drying, the difference between freeze drying and dehydration, the process it goes through, and a lot more. So stay tuned. Thank you so much once again for joining me for another video here on my YouTube channel. If you're enjoying my videos, please take the time to subscribe to my channel, like the video, leave a comment if you want. Those are all truly appreciated. And don't forget that we've got 40% off any or all of our raw vegan recipe ebooks. The code is rawfood40 and you can find the link in the description box below or right here on the screen. So let's talk about freeze dryers. So we just got this freeze dryer and we've been saving up for it for a little over 3 years. And yes, it is a big investment, but it's something that we really wanted to include in our healthful living. We want to preserve food, and there's a few things that I want to talk about in this video concerning food preservation. But I also want to talk about why we got it, the difference between dehydration and freeze drying, and all the cool things that you can do with a freeze dryer. So first up, there's only one company in the United States that currently sells home use freeze dryers. The company's called Harvest Right, and you can find the link to Harvest Right in the description box below. So if you are interested in getting one eventually in the future as well, that's where you can get one for your home use. There are other brands, I believe, in Europe, so you might want to research home freeze drying machines if you don't live in the United States or Canada. I believe they ship to Canada, I'm not sure, don't quote me on that, but that's where we got our freeze dryer from. Now we have the large freeze dryer. As you can see, there's enough room for 5 trays in here. The medium size has enough room for 4 trays, and the small size does 3 trays. So it really depends on how much you're going to be freeze drying. If you're going to be buying a lot of extra food, or if you have a garden and you want to preserve a lot of the food, freeze dryer is where it's at. So I've had many people ask me, what's the difference between dehydrating and freeze drying? So here I have 2 examples of bell peppers. So when we went to LA over the weekend with John Kohler, we went to the wholesale terminals and farmers markets and all kinds of good places, and we got some amazing deals on some food. We got cases of organic bell peppers for dollars. Like, we had one big gigantic case of the colored heirloom long peppers for $8 because some of them had mold on them, which we just cut off. They were still really, really good quality. And for $8, why not? So we chopped those up and we freeze dried them. These are the freeze dried ones. We also got cases at the produce terminal for, again, dollars, and we actually dehydrated these ones. So there is benefit to freeze drying and dehydrating, especially if you don't have the money to buy a freeze dryer. You can still dehydrate food, it's still great. The thing is, there are differences between dehydrating and freeze drying. So dehydrated food typically only lasts 1 to 4 years, depending on how it's stored and the moisture that's still remaining in the food. So 1 to 4 years is the typical shelf life of dehydrated food, whereas freeze-dried food, if stored properly under vacuum without any oxygen in the jar or Mylar bag, you can store food up to 25 years. This could potentially last, not that it would, we're gonna eat it before then, but 25 years. So if you are into food prep, food storage, freeze drying is where it's at. Especially, again, like I said, if you have a garden where you're getting food at really incredible prices, you can just freeze dry it and preserve it for later. Nutritionally, they're different as well. So dehydrated food, because you're using heat to dehydrate them, and for raw foodies, it's not that big of a deal because we're not using super high heat, but there's still heat involved, and that can lessen the nutritional content by around 40%. That's what's the consensus. So 40% less nutrition in dehydrated food, whereas with freeze-dried food, you're retaining 97% of the nutrition from the original product. So nutritionally, freeze drying is a way better way of preserving your food than dehydrating. But again, dehydrating is still good. It's just, this is next level. So you can still get great nutrition. It's not devoid, right? There's still stuff in here. It's still good and it's still usable. We like to dehydrate certain things like these bell peppers because we like to add them to sauces. We'll add these to sauces as well, but this adds a little different texture because freeze drying is really porous. So if you can think of maybe space food, or it's really hard to describe the texture if you haven't had freeze-dried food before. It's kind of chewy, but porous and airy. It's super light, like the weight compared is obvious. This one is definitely a lot heavier than the freeze-dried food because with freeze-drying, you're eliminating pretty much 99% of the water. With dehydrating, you're retaining around 5% still moisture in the product. So there's 3 factors in why food goes bad. You've got heat, you've got oxygen, and you've got water. So with the freeze dryer, you're eliminating like 99 or higher % of the water. So you're pretty much eliminating that. And then when you store it under vacuum, with an oxygen absorber, you're eliminating as much of the oxygen as you possibly can, and you're not using high heats. We'll talk about the process in a second, but these 3 factors are what allow freeze-dried food to last up to 25 years, and they still retain the nutritional content that they did when you first did it. So again, it is an investment, but it is definitely worth it if you are preserving your food. So how does a freeze dryer even work? Well, what happens is there's 3 kind of steps that it goes through in the freeze dryer itself. So the first step is freezing, and it goes into a deep freeze, colder than your freezer will go to, because the freezers typically aren't that cold compared, because this will take it down to -30 to -50 degrees Fahrenheit. So depending on what you put in here, it'll decide what temperature to freeze it to. Normally 3 times the point of freezing for that specific food. So it goes down low. It gets cold, cold in here. Once it's fully frozen, then it starts the second process, which is the first part of the drying process, where it actually warms up slightly and the water starts to evaporate out of the food. And then in the third process, that's when the vacuum starts to pull all the water out of the food, thus freeze drying it. So it's basically drying it while it's frozen. That's kind of what it means. Dehydrating is totally different. Dehydrating, you just put the food in the dehydrator, you set it to say 110 to 115 degrees Fahrenheit. Depending on what you're making, I know there's a lot of people who set it higher, but that's how you use the dehydrator. So, and it depends on the time too. This will take anywhere from 25 to 40 plus hours to freeze dry your food, and it's enclosed, you can't take it out or anything like that. Whereas with the dehydrator, you can stop it at any time, you can check it, you can put your hand in there and see what's going on. So that is another difference between them two. But the process is freezing, and then the water evaporation kind of, and then the absorption phase of freeze drying. So right now we are almost ready for our next trays to go into our freeze dryer. Now we're just in the experimentation phase. So this is our 3rd run with our freeze dryer, and I've already had so many people ask me so many questions. That's why I wanted to do this video and to show you a few things. So our first round that we did in our freeze dryer, we dried these bell peppers. So that was our very first run, just to see how it was working, see if the size that we chopped was good. Our second run, we did a few other things. We did dragon fruit. So we got 24 yellow dragon fruits for 15 bucks because they were moldy on the outside. Normally they're like $5 each, and we got 24 of them for 15 bucks in LA. So we just freeze dried them, and they taste like cotton candy. They're super cool, and these will be snacks and also preserved for later. They're also sealed under vacuum. If you guys want to get the lids with the vacuum, link in the description box below for those if you're interested. So this was part of our second run. We also did some jalapenos, and these are going to be added to our dressings. And because they're so light and porous, you can actually crumble them into a powder just in your hands. That's how delicate they are after being in the freeze dryer. So you can actually just make your own powders. You can make your own powders with stuff like this. And that's one of the main reasons why we got our freeze dryer. So people have been asking also, Lissa, why did you and Nate get the freeze dryer in the first place? Well, the number one reason is food preservation, because it's a great way to preserve the nutrition and to keep things for longer. But there are a lot of other reasons that we got it too that tie with that. For example, we can make powders to add to our dressings and sauces and things like that. Tomato powder, for example. I love adding tomato powder to marinaras or any tomato-based sauces because it really brings out that flavor of the tomato. And we can make our own in here. We can just freeze dry 5 trays of tomatoes and then we can just grind them up into a powder and we've made our own tomato powder. We can also do that with any fruit, any other vegetable. We can make a bunch of powders that we can later add to our food. Bell pepper powder is amazing added to dressings. It has so much flavor, especially soups or chilies or curries, that kind of thing. So again, making the powders is a really great way to use the freeze dryer. We could also, in the future, if we wanted to, we could freeze dry microgreens and make microgreens powder that we can add to smoothies and sauces and all kinds of stuff just to boost the nutritional content. Because if we can't eat everything that we grow, we currently dehydrate it. But now that we know that we can preserve 97% of the nutrition, might as well just cut what we don't eat and freeze dry it. Then we can turn it into the powder and we can use that instead of the dehydrated ones. But again, dehydration is still a great alternative. If you can't afford a freeze dryer, remember, work with where you're at instead of trying to be perfect or worrying about not being perfect. We've been saving up for this for 3 years, over 3 years. So we've been dehydrating all that time without worrying about the nutritional content. We just wanted to take it a little step further by grabbing the freeze dryer. So another reason why we got this machine is for camping, backpacking, and hiking meals. This is something that Nate and I are really passionate about. We like to go backpacking overnight, we like to go camping, we like to go hiking, and we want to be able to take food with us on longer treks because we can't take a lot of fresh stuff when we're backpacking for 2 or 3 nights. We need to have freeze-dried food because it is so light. You're taking out pretty much all of the water, so it's really super light and it's easier to carry more calories when you're hiking than not. Obviously, you want to drink lots of water when you're eating freeze-dried food, but it's a great alternative if you want to go out and you want to eat raw, because this is still, I consider this still raw food because it's preserving the nutrition and it's healthy foods. We're not getting like bars full of oils or animal products or processed foods or anything like that that we're taking on our hikes. We're taking really good high quality food, but weight is an issue when you're camping or backpacking for days on end and you're carrying everything that you need on your back and you need like 3,000 or 4,000 calories a day. Freeze drying is a great option. So we're going to be working on a new book discussing the difference between freeze drying and dehydrating and also different meals that you can make. So that's going to be coming sometime maybe in 2024. We really want to test out some recipes and different things that you can make. And again, even if you can't afford a freeze dryer, we're still going to include plenty of recipes that you can make in your dehydrator. You can also buy freeze-dried food from some companies. They do sell freeze-dried food, so if that's an option for you, you could do that as well. But again, for camping and hiking, this is such a great option and we're really excited to use it. So our machine is actually now ready for the next trays for our 3rd ever run in the freeze dryer. We're going to be freeze drying today some masala. It's basically marinated cauliflower, peas, bell peppers, onions, and mushrooms. We've marinated it in our masala sauce, the recipe you can find in my app at www.rawfoodromance.com. But we're going to be putting in 2 trays of the masala, 2 trays of marinated sunchokes. So I chopped up a bunch of sunchokes, marinated it in some lemon juice, some koji, you could use miso in place of that, and a bunch of herbs, so dill and parsley and chives. So marinated sunchokes, we've got 2 trays of those, and we have a tray of quiche. So Harvest Right has these inserts that you can get that are silicone and they're portioned out so that you can put stuff in there. And we've made our trays, and Nate is here with the trays. So I'm just going to move this aside a little bit. Look at those. So we've been freezing these already just to help the machine out. But this is the quiche that we put into the silicone trays. And then we've got our masala in there as well. So let's just move this over so we can put things into the freeze dryer. Woo. All right, so tray number 1 with our quiche. Let's make sure there's nothing on the bottom there. We also got these really cool tray stackers that help us to freeze it in the freezer before it goes in the freeze dryer. Tray number 2, and it smells amazing. It's got our masala on there. You can freeze dry whole meals as well. You could put chili on here, you could put salad dressings, you could put smoothies, you could put ice cream. You could freeze dry pretty much anything. And here's our second tray of masala. And here are the sunchokes. They've been marinating and freezing. These are going to be so delicious. I can't wait to add these to things and to just munch on them. And here's our final tray going into our freeze dryer. We also like to pull the O-ring out just slightly so that it makes a better seal. And I also want to wipe this down to get rid of any particles that may be there that would prevent the vacuum from functioning properly. So then when you close it, you want to make sure that you see the ring all the way around, and we don't see it over here or over here, so we should pull it out just a little bit more. There we go. Looks good, looks good. All right, then all you have to do is push continue. And that's it. It's super easy. Then we just have to wait for everything to go through the whole cycle, and it can be anywhere from 25 to maybe even 45 hours. It really depends on what you have in there and the hydration level of the foods. Once that's finished though, then you can put them into jars like we had, and you can vacuum seal them with an oxygen absorber, or you can get the Mylar bags that they sell at Harvest Right. These are the bags that you can use, and there's even like a little space here that you can write what's in the bag because you can't see it. So if you were going to make dressings or anything like that, you could say this is Lissa's French dressing freeze dried, which is cool because if you're going camping and you wanted to have, say, a smoothie, you could actually freeze dry the smoothies and then put them in the bags and write down smoothie, banana date, or raspberry lime, or whatever you wanted to have as your smoothie. And then you would just need to add water, put them in a jar, add some water, and you've got yourself a smoothie on the trail. Again, you put them in these bags and you use the oxygen absorbers. So they have oxygen absorbers that go with the bags, so you can preserve your food up to almost 25 years. Again, depending if they are preserved properly, then they can last that long. So let's give our freeze dryer a little bit of time to do its thing, and we'll be back to show you what they look like when they're done, probably tomorrow or the next day.
So here they are. They are all dry and ready to come out of the freeze dryer. They've been in there for a little over 40 hours. And here's the trays, the sunchokes, the masala, and the quiche. They're totally dry and ready to be bagged up. Check out what they sound like here. We're really happy with this third run in our freeze dryer. And everything is light and fluffy. The quiche even turned out really well, and they're quite easy to pull out of the silicone trays. We went on to put some of them in jars with vacuum seal lids. These ones we will eat periodically, and the rest went into the Mylar bags with an oxygen absorber. These still need to be further vacuum sealed for added freshness, but that's our storage.
Thank you so much for joining me for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that you learned something new and maybe potentially want to start saving up for your own freeze dryer as well. If you like videos like this, please like it and subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can also enjoy 40% off any or all of our raw vegan recipes with code RAWFOOD40. The link is right here on the screen or in the description box below. So if you're looking to add more raw foods to your diet, I hope you can find some delicious recipes in our ebooks. Thank you again for joining us today, and we will see you again for another video. As always, I love you so much, and fruit on.